So you're sitting at this table with all the other leaders from your organizations. All the other VPs are there. The CEO's there, but there's tension. CEO's not looking at you, and the others are kind of looking down too. And CEO, she starts in and she says, the board thinks there's a problem. Post-pandemic, there's turnover is higher, hiring is more difficult, and they want us to focus on culture. And then all the eyes turn to you, the HR director. What are we going to do about our culture? What's the plan? Do you have the scientific knowledge in order to present what the plan is for culture? What is more, could you inspire the people around this table with your thoughts about culture? Well, that's what this talk is to be about for you today, is to give you that knowledge, the case studies, the science to back up your thoughts about culture, the things that you want to create. And to give you not only thoughts, but inspiration, so that when you present to these people, they're going to be inspired about your plans for culture. So I started out my thought as a researcher with a question. I wanted to build culture around the one thing that motivates all people. So what is the one thing that motivates all people? So I went around asking people, what do you think is the one thing that motivates people at work? So what are the big categories you think I came up with in my inquiries? Shout some things out. What do you think is people at work, the average employee says, this motivates me at work? Recognition. Paycheck. Money. Challenge. What else? Flexibility. So enjoyment. These are the big categories that I came up with in surveying people like you all over the nation. I get these three big categories. You know, they were all variations of things, but people said, I want, of course, the money. I want to enjoy my job. I want to accomplish the big dream, something meaningful. So I set out to test those things. And we're going to test those things together today, okay, with some of our research, okay? So we're going to do a work experiment. So you'll have to stand up again. Stand up, everybody. We're gonna work at Pumps R Us this morning, and we all need you to start pumping. Okay? I'm gonna see if I can motivate you. They said I could give you a penny a pump. Okay? And I'm looking around, and you gotta pump faster. You gotta pump at about this pace so you can make $35 for the rest of this hour. So we're gonna do this for the rest of the hour, and I've got a special sensor that tells how fast you guys are really motivated. And oh, you guys can sit down because you guys are just not going to make it for the rest of the hour. Well, studies show that motivation with money, as long as you're getting paid fairly for what you're doing, you don't keep working harder. It's not a motivational factor. It might get you to a job, but it's not going to motivate you to do more and more. Once it becomes fair compensation, it's no longer an issue. So I thought, let's test enjoyment. And I thought, this guy's got to be rocking the hair, so he's got to be enjoying that. So let's pick somebody whose work is a game. This is Andre Agassi back in the day. He got to show up at work and it was a game. Okay, he got to hit a ball across the court. And when he walked to work, he had stadiums full of people going, he's here! Andre's at work! Yay! Who gets that? You know, he gets millions of dollars for doing it. And he was the best in the world at it. He won the US Open, the French Open, the Australian Open, the Open. If it was opened, he opened it. He won the Olympics. He was #1 in the world. He was married to Brooke Shields. He had his own mansions. And in his autobiography, ironically called Open, he had this to say about enjoying work. He said, let me tell you about winning. Winning changes nothing. He said in desperation, how can I have my own plane, a bank full of money, and be #1 in the world and still not enjoy my work? And he went into a crisis. He went into a downward spiral. He started throwing his racket, cussing out the other player, cussing out the refs, getting frustrated. He ended up on methamphetamines. He ended up at the bottom of the league, amateur leagues, could barely play anymore. Enjoying work, is that enough to fuel you for the rest of your life? When given everything, it didn't work for Andre Agassi. How about the big dream, the big idea? This is me, actually. You don't recognize me. I have hair. And this is back in my early days. I had a dream. I was an artist originally, and I thought, that'd be great to do art, but I want to do something bigger, something deeply meaningful. And deep meaning can drive people. So I thought, I'm going to push aside my art. I'm going to become a social worker. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to go to a foreign country and see if I can influence that country to change. Well, my daughter Ashley, she's in college now too, and she came to me in sort of crying despair, that desperate moment that college kids come to you in angst. She wasn't smiling like this. It was, Dad, I'm an art major, but I don't think I can do this. I enjoy art, but not for the rest of my life. I don't want to be up in a room by myself painting paintings and selling paintings. I just can't do it, Dad. What am I going to do? But I'm afraid if I change my major, what if I don't like that? I could be wasting my time, years of all the money that costs for this, all the loans. Dad, what do I do? Well, I got to tell her about my dream. And my dream started here in that foreign country on a road called Marathon Road. Now, this is the road that the actual first marathon runner was running down from his victory. I was going to change this country. I was going to feed the poor. I was going to influence people for better as a social worker, change lives. And so on this road that the ancient marathon runner was running down in crystal pure skies, he was running to tell the king that they had just won, that they had just fought a battle and fought for their lives and won. And then he died because he had run so hard. He had put all of his life into his dream. And I was putting all my life into this dream as I was driving down this road, and I was dying too, but for a different reason. It was dark and smoggy, so I put down the visor on my helmet because I was driving a little Euro scooter down the street. But I put it down not just to keep the smog and the darkness out. I was putting it down so I could scream a desperate cry. Ah! Because in 3 short months, my dream had met my manager, and my dream died. I was in my 20s, and I thought, how could this thing that I thought, the big dream that would last me for the rest of my life, die in 3 months? While I was out feeding the poor on the streets of Athens, I was having shame shoved down my throat by my manager. Every meeting we had, we weren't enough. He stayed up until 3 in the morning. We went to bed at 10. What were you doing? He worked in the jungles of Irian Jaya when he was in his 20s, met tribes that nobody had ever met before, brought them medicine. What were you doing? You're working in Europe. Modern amenities. You didn't raise as much money as I did when I was your age. You didn't work hard enough. You didn't do this good enough. All day long, every day. So I was screaming as I drove down that path. So I was in crisis. But I'm not alone in this crisis. What do we tell the Ashleys? Do I say, Ashley, just follow your dream. Ashley, just go out and make money. That's what work is all about. But what do we tell the 50-year-olds? What do we tell the moms, the single moms that come to us? What do you say to them as HR directors? How do we inspire the workforce, the people that are out there that come to us? What kind of culture can we create? And we know this. We've heard this from Gallup before. Okay, so I need some crowd participation again. This is the average team. If the average team were to line up in America, this is what Gallup says they've heard. So this little sliver over here, you guys are the guys that are pulling hard. All right? If you guys are pulling hard at work and you're engaged, let's hear it. Yay! Yay! All right, they're awake. Now this is the majority group. You're disengaged. You're there, but you're not pulling hard at work. You're kind of, let's hear it. Meh. All right, you guys are disengaged. You're good at that. All right, and then you had your disgruntled people. So you guys got to be the disgruntled people. Let's hear a boo. All right, in touch with your negativity. That's good. All right, so this is the average team. 70% of us over here are disengaged or disgruntled about work. And this is the average team in the United States. And you think, well, it's not at my work. It probably is. Not because you're not trying, but there's something missing. There's a crisis in our workforce. This is what the statistics look like, and you've probably seen them before from Gallup. Let me just highlight a few. Look at all the turnover, the loss. 1 day a week in lost productivity per employee. That's 20%. 1 day a week, you might as well just send them home. Look at this, Gen Z, 75% quit for emotional reasons. And we say, oh, this Gen Z, they just don't get it. Or do they? Maybe they're smart. Maybe they haven't given up on life yet. What do we have to offer the next generation of great culture? So that returns me to my research question. If it's not these three things that I've covered, what could it be? What's the one thing that motivates all people to work? And oftentimes when I ask this question, at first I get left brain answers. People go, yeah, I'd work for that. Yeah, and they're calculating. But everyone's right brain really knows the answer to this question. So I rephrase it so that the right brain can calculate it. So I take it out the quantity of time. If you could choose just one thing for all eternity that would motivate you, what would you choose? So imagine with me, we open a portal to a sci-fi portal into eternity, and you're going to take one thing from this earth, jump through that portal, and it's got to satisfy you and motivate you for the rest of eternity. So it's not just, wow, that was good now, but it's wow, forever. What could do that? So I'm going to give you the 4 things I've studied to come up, but you only get the one thing alone, so you get money alone. You can buy anything you want. You can be on Amazon all day long, just buy. But that's all you get for all eternity. Number 2, you get enjoyment alone. You get to pick a game. You could play tennis. You could mountain bike. You could canoe. You could backpack. But that's all you get for all eternity. It's got to satisfy you. Accomplish the big dream. You get to work on that big company you've always wanted to start, that big idea, that entrepreneur. You get to save the whales. You get to fix something. But that one project, that one dream, that's it for all eternity. Would that work for you? Or I give you number 4. You could be surrounded by those who love and value you for all eternity. Which would you choose? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Raise your hand if you choose 4. In fact, stand up if you chose 4. Because I want you to see this. Everyone here is standing up. We've got all sorts of diversity here. We've got all people of different... And in fact, when I ask people, look around. This unifies everyone. You can sit down now. But everyone that I ask this question of, 95% people choose number 4. Line workers, CEOs, moms, dads, people of all different ethnic backgrounds. Choose number 4. Being valued by others, valuing and valuing others is the number one thing that we want more than anything else. We all know in our hearts of hearts. I don't have to give people time. They all go number 4. And then they start thinking all the others are ridiculous by comparison. This is it. Valuing people is what motivates all people. It's the one thing that we want as human beings. It's actually the one thing you're physiologically wired to desire more than anything else in this entire world. It's universal. Like I said, it's all cultures, all people, everywhere. In fact, they've done studies, not just my research, but the University of Arizona went around the world asking people, what do you want? And that answer came back. Valuing people, being cared for by others. It ignites our bodies and our brains. We're going to see, as we dive into this, I'll unpack it some more with neuroscience, what exactly it does to us physiologically. It changes us. It makes us to thrive. And science confirms this, okay? Research study after research study confirms this. This isn't something I just made up out of wishful thinking. This is the one thing that motivates all people. It's the OS, the operating system of all culture. Why doesn't culture work? Because we don't have a functional operating system for it to run other programs on. We think, why isn't this working? Because we don't have the fundamental human operating system of valuing people. Leaders don't know how to value each other. They might want to, but they don't know how to. So that leads me to this question. It's like if we wanted to, if everyone agrees on this one idea that valuing people is what's so important, then why don't we do this? Well, I've come to understand that there's 2 pathways that we've been taking in the business world and in organization cultures. One is called the commodity culture. And that's the path that most of our cultures have been built on, even though we might think we're not building that, but because of our methods and our cultural background, we are creating a commodity culture. But there's another pathway, this valuing people pathway of VP culture that we could create if we just knew how. But I'm going to take us down this first pathway first, commodity culture. How did that get created? Well, when management was first getting started in the 50s, behavioralism was all the vogue, which is reward and punishment. Stimulus response of the brain. They make you jump through a hoop and you would. And the thing is, it works. Externals are valuable to this system because they figured, like, if I just give you a reward, you'll do it. And the thing is, it works. People do that, okay? It works temporarily. And that's the confusing thing for most leaders. Like, I gave them a punishment and they stopped doing it. I gave them a reward and they did do it. It needs increasing stimulus, though. Like, you can't just keep giving the person the same thing, the same penny a pump, or else it keeps going down and they get slower and slower and slower. So it works, but it doesn't. It destroys and erodes value because it breaks apart teams. Paul Marciano, PhD from Yale, wrote this book called Carrots and Sticks Don't Work. And he says that actually when you do this in organizations, it starts to destroy value, it destroys teamwork, it destroys culture. So why do we do it? Because we're following and we're utilizing this one pathway in our brain called the dopamine pathway, the dopaminergic pathway. It's the stuff molecule. It makes us pursue goals. Goals, goals, goals. That's what you always hear about in business, don't you? Goals and goods. Got to get to the deadline and make this stuff. That's what we think we focus on. We get a happy moment when we get there. Yay, I made the goal. Yay, I got the reward. And it actually does make you feel good for that moment. That's what dopamine does. It makes you feel good. That's why we're like, yeah, I think it's working. This technique is working. It's designed for stuff. This molecule is designed to seek out stuff and rewards. And like once it finds it, it goes, woohoo! But it's not designed to seek out people and value people. And here's the key. Down regulation. What does that mean? Each time you get it, the first time you find that donut and you eat it and go, well, that was yummy, the next time it won't be as yummy, and the next time not as much. And it's the reason why addicts keep taking more and more of those dopaminergic drugs like cocaine, methamphetamines, because the first hit was good, the second hit, I need more, and now I need more, and now they're taking so much it could kill them to the detriment of who? The people in their lives, their families, their coworkers, themselves. It's not about them, it's about this hit of dopamine. It's destructive. It's a destructive pathway. Dr. Robert Lustig, this guy here, wrote a book called The Hacking of the American Mind. And he says we're being hacked by dopamine. We're leading to this. We're marketing to this. We're engineering all of our cell phone apps. One more swipe, because it's about novelty. Maybe you'll find something. When we don't have value, we hack it. So it's much easier to hack it than to actually create human value. That's why we're using this dopaminergic pathway so much in our culture, and that's why leaders default to it, because it's so easy to use. And it's all over our environment. Okay, we seek to use stuff to replace human valuing. Okay, we've hacked our food. You know, it's all been engineered by scientists to make you eat one more. It's got enough MSG in it, enough sugar in it, enough fat in it. You just can't stop. We've hacked our electronics, so you can't stop. There's always one more show that immediately follows the other one. There's some meta story now in every show that you have to keep finding out what happens. Okay? So even in our marketing, it's that way too. And unfortunately, our corporate leadership are using this hacking too, to reward people, to get people to make the next step. Let's see here. There we go. Unfortunately, this causes scarcity. And scarcity causes cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So all these punishment and reward cycles, our people are like overwhelmed. That's why they're letting go. They're the majority that say, meh, and kind of let go of that, the work pressure. They can't stand it anymore. When reward is limited, that's what happens. You're not valuable, stuff is. You might not say it in your workplace, but when goals, stuff becomes everything that gets communicated by your leadership, that's what's felt. That's why 70% of the workforce is showing up like it is. It actually causes physical illness. 41% of illnesses 42% are caused by mental health issues. Largely because of this kind of management, this kind of culture. And what's worse is there's presenteeism. Those are the people that actually show up, but are 1.5% less productive than the people that went home. because they have to let go at work even more to even manage their lives with all of this stress. So this is your brain, according to Dr. Bruce Berry. It's like, why does this work? What's going on in our brains? So here's 4 portions of your brain that Dr. Perry points out. You got your cortex, which is your smart, your planner, your values, your vision. It's all there. That's your intelligence. And then below that is the limbic system, which is your emotional system. And below that is your diencephalon. Big word. And that's about, it regulates your systems, okay? And then you got your brainstem that keeps you alive, okay? It keeps your heart and your lungs and everything functioning. So those are all different portions of your brain. But he said this, it's state dependent. Depending on how you're feeling as a human being, if you're calm, you can use your highest brain. If you're alert, something emotional is going on in your limbic system, so your cortex goes offline, you just go to limbic. When you go to alarm, then your regulatory system is taking over, and when you go to fear, it's like, and terror, it's just survival, baby. And this is what happens to your IQ. You see how it plummets each time when a portion of your brain goes offline? If most of our workforce is operating at about half of their intelligence or less than that, depending on your overall intelligence, you can see why all of the statistics are true. The lack of thriving, the lack of financial output, because our brains aren't even functioning. So what do we do about this? This is driven down by our dopamine and cortisol, because they're neuromodulators, okay? That means they tune the rest of the brain to get more and more stress out of it, okay? So it's pushing you down into these lower and lower systems because we're using this system that doesn't create value. People in our cultures, oftentimes, if we're using this system, they don't feel value. When the human body doesn't feel value, the human body shuts off. The brain shuts off, the body shuts off, it goes downhill fast. Let's turn the page to something more optimistic now. Let's talk about VP culture, valuing people culture. What happens to people on value? It's attachment science is what this is built on. So rather than the behavioralism, which theorizes that we are just robots, we just need to press the right buttons and then we will do the right work, this is where people are valued. People are wired for value. That's what attachment science says. It was originated by Dr. John Bowlby in England back in the 1940s and 50s. He noticed that parents would bring their little children to the hospital, and as probably English people, they would drop Johnny off and not stay with him because they didn't want to dote on him. But there was a few weird English parents that would stick around and care for Johnny. And Johnny, when the parents stick around, there was attachment happening. And Johnny thrived. Johnny got better. And he actually took scientific notes and noticed, like, oh, it's demonstrably better for Johnny to have attachment figures around. So he thought, well, maybe this is not just about children, maybe it's about adults. And not only he, but it's been studied for decades now. It's proven that children and adults are all wired for connection. The attachment theory is one of the prime theories in psychology today. Behavioralism is less in vogue and more attachment theory is in vogue these days. Okay? Think about it. When you become a teenager, maturing into adulthood, are you more concerned about connection or less? More! Those teenagers are like crazy about connection. Okay? We grow into even more realization that we need connection. Our brains are attuned to connection. Our senses are wired for it. That's why that meeting at the beginning, if the CEO is not looking at you and everyone else senses the tension, you're like, uh-oh, there's not connection, there's not valuing going on. We need, in fact, leaders are leading by attachment, not by power and control. This is a breakthrough here. If you lead by attachment, people will follow you because they're attached to you, not because you have power and control. Okay? So that's key. What happens to your brain when you feel connection? Now you get this serotonin that is released. Serotonin is another neuromodulator. It means it tunes your entire body. In fact, it sends signals out into your entire body. Your body, your brain, all portions of your brain are what scientists call innervated by serotonin. And then it modulates all the other modulators. It gives you this sense of contentment and safety. That's why you all could choose number 4 immediately, because you've all experienced serotonin. You all know immediately what it feels like. You could say, yes, 4. Because I know what that feels like. For all eternity, I could feel content, safe, happy. That's what serotonin does to your brain, and you know it. You felt it. And we all do in our heart of hearts. We've all experienced it. In fact, a longevity study from Harvard proved this fact. They studied kids from college and Harvard all the way through the rest of their lives into their 80s, 90s until they died. And you know what they found? The people who were surrounded by those who loved and cared for them, valued them, who had valuing relationships around them, thrived. Their families thrived, their businesses thrived, they made more money, they were healthier, they lived longer. And those who chose, I'm going to be the Scrooge, I'm just going to win, be a robber baron. They didn't win, they lost, their families were bad, their health was bad, their business was bad. Longevity proves that being surrounded by people who value and valuing others created long-lasting health, thriving. It was a signal to thrive as a human being. Okay? It's the master modulator, according to Dr. Hart, PhD. She says, this is the conductor. It modulates the dopamine. It modulates the cortisol. It tunes down your pain. It tunes up your pleasure. All of that. It gives you energy. It gives you life. Even what we were doing this morning, that gave you energy because we were connecting as human beings. So let's look. It also develops serotonin, and connection and being valued releases oxytocin. And this was studied by economist Dr. Paul Zak. So he was looking not from a neurological standpoint. He just wanted to know what made business happen, what made organizations work. He said, when people connect, oxytocin is released. And he saw this, and he said, it's the foundation of trust in business. So it's not a thing that's foreign to business. It's a thing that's essential for business in life. He said this, after his years of study, he said, there are no shortcuts or substitutions. Success is great, but there's no amount of money or achievement or fame that will satisfy our human need for attachment. Attachment was fundamental. Valuing people was fundamental to this economist for business. And what else? When we're valued, these get released. We get free endocannabinoids and endogenous opioids. Yay! What are those? Well, the first one is endocannabinoids is pot, and the second one is opioids. That's like heroin. So your brain gets endogenously created heroin and pot inside of it. No wonder you feel wonderful when you're on these things. Your brain has receptors for these. And your brain when was it tuned to be released? When you're in healthy, valuing relationships. That's why you all said, I could jump through to eternity with that because it makes me feel great. It tunes down your pain and it tunes up your pleasure in a long-term effect. That's why lonely people take exogenous, external, illicit drugs to make up for this deficit. 1 in 25 people say they have no one person in their life to even speak to. No friends. So that's why we have a crisis of these chemicals, because we were meant for those. We were meant to thrive on these. This is Dr. Stephen Porges, another brain scientist. He studied the vagal nerve, which is your 10th cranial nerve. And you know what he called it? The social connection circuit. Why would you call a brain nerve a social connection circuit? Because he saw that when you were surrounded by valuing relationships, it electrically signals your entire body. This nerve signals your heart, your lungs, your internal organs to function at an optimal level. So your brain goes wham and signals your body to function properly when you're surrounded by social connections. It gives you that positive, energetic feeling. So we're back to this model of the brain. The brain. Okay, so we saw how cortisol and dopamine regulated it down to the brainstem to survival mode. Ready for this? This is exciting. Serotonin does the opposite. It lifts us up into our highest personage, where we can think, be, thrive, and it modulates it and keeps it there because it's the conductor. Valuing people puts us in this state of brain where we're our most intelligent, most emotionally sophisticated self. Cultures based on this are going to thrive. So if your culture is based on dopamine and you think, oh, goals, 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 money, 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 your serotonin is going to be small and your dopamine is going to be big. And over time, you're going to lose in both categories. People are going to get sick. Things are not going to thrive. You might be in an industry with enough margin to survive this. But what about this model? Where serotonin is large, you can still have goals. That dopamine goes, yay, we made it. But serotonin is modulating them, making them safe, making them productive for people to do. And then they both grow. In a culture where everyone's valuing each other, they grow. People come into work and go, yay, I'm here. Literally, they like being at work. And then their goals can grow. Everything grows when you value people first. So creating a VP culture is where people feel valued. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir here because HR people are like, yes, 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 preach it. Because this is what we want. We want people to feel valued. But again, I come to that crisis and I say, well, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't HR people doing this? And you are. There's a lot of good techniques and a lot of good things that are already happening out there. But I wanted to organize this. I wanted to bring this together for people. You need a target culture, because oftentimes when I go to these things, I talk to people, I say, do you have a target culture? We got stuff we do. We have Pizza Friday. We do exercises. We have some people come and tell us some good things. But do you have a target culture, a blueprint? And we'll talk about how to create that in a bit. But let's do a case study first. Because I get cynics and I get people like, that's nice brain science, psychology stuff, but this is the dog-eat-dog world of business, Randall. You got to win. You got to kick people to the side. So let's do a case study. Let's study Southwest Airlines, and I picked them for a couple reasons. A, they have a culture that's focused on valuing people. In fact, they call it loving people. Okay, that's why they have these little hearts on all their planes. You might be wondering. It's not just there for decoration. It's not just the marketing ploy. Their CEOs, their chairman of the boards, it's in their culture big time when you read books about Southwest. In fact, I did a presentation. There was a woman from Southwest. She said, yes, that's the way it is still. And here's another reason, because they're not a unicorn industry. When they started 50 years ago, it wasn't like they were Tesla and they're so far ahead of everybody and nobody could touch them. They were in a competitive industry. They were in the airlines industry. You know, there was a bunch of big, heavy industries back then that were way ahead of them. They had less capitalization, so they had to cut their prices, so they had less margin. And the big players wouldn't let them fly point to point. They wouldn't let them on the internet of ticketing. They had to do their own ticketing on the side. So they had all these disadvantages. So if they could win doing all of these disadvantageous business practices with this one differentiator, they're going to prove that there's something there. So what did they do in 50 years? They had 50 years of profitability. You're thinking, yeah, Randall, but they're in an airline industry. They make tons of money. The airline industry has posted a net loss in 50 years. It means the industry as a whole has lost money. This is the only airlines to be 50 years, year after year, through recessions and everything, they've made money. It's unheard of. They have more stock value than all the others, most productive employees in those 50 years, the lowest turnovers, no layoffs. They had a furlough during COVID. That's it. Highest safety records, highest satisfaction records, and the largest airlines in the United States and almost in the world. I flew from St. Louis. They're the only one that has their own terminal in St. Louis. And you think, oh, okay, Randall, maybe you just made this up. Well, let's talk to the CEO who ran the business for 50 years, see what he has to say. He says, for those who think leading with love is just simply soft management, review the record of Southwest Airlines over the last 50 years. From these results, it can factually and logically be concluded that if you seek long and continued success for your business organization, treat your people with love and treat them as family. Herb Kelleher. You think, well, maybe that's just an outlier, Randall. Maybe that's, maybe it's just those weirdos at Southwest. Well, we'd be wrong. This guy's the $1 trillion coach. You might not recognize him. He was CEO for a little company called Intel. And then his name is Bill Campbell. And he was an executive coach for these little guys you've probably never heard of. Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google. He coached all these guys. He was their executive coach. And Bill Campbell, unfortunately, died recently. And so these three guys got together and they wrote a book. And they wanted us to know something important about Bill. What he taught them. Bill taught them to value people. In fact, they had this story in the book about Bill. You think, he's going to treat everybody differently. So he's coaching powder puff football. He's got all these little girls. And Steve Jobs calls him up and he goes, look, girls, Steve Jobs, voicemail. Because he was present for the people he was with. He valued who he was with. No matter how important the person that was calling him, he was present and valuing everybody who he was with. And that was a hallmark of this guy. And then when they wrote this book, this is what they wanted you to know about Bill Campbell and what he taught them as executives. And then there's the Gallup studies that have been done all over the world with like 35,000 different companies and millions of participants over the world. These statistics show that when people are engaged in healthy, valuing relationships, it elevates all of these financial outcomes. It's just logical that when people are thriving because they're feeling valued, and you put all those valued people together, it's going to take off. Things are going to get great. Thriving people together, helping each other feel valued, valuing their customers. Obviously, it's going to create more stock value than a bunch of depressed, letting go, kind of results that we have for 70% of most companies. And I point this out. These are the airlines that went out of business during Southwest's tenure for 50 years. If you're in a competitive market, like the airlines, where there's no margin for error, these people had error. They didn't value their people. They went out of business. 77 different companies during the time that Southwest was valuing their employees and creating VP culture. So how do we create this VP culture? I was getting at this a little bit earlier. It's created by having a template, a blueprint. Okay, we're going to look at this blueprint. So these three categories I've found, I've done a lot of study here. Like, what scientifically, what ingredients do we need that make up that culture that we all want? It's these three things. So if you're going to create a culture, you need a target. We need to know where we're going. It's not just cultural ideas where, I think we have a good vibe here, don't you? Yeah, I think we've got a good vibe. What does that mean? Okay, I'm going to try to make it objective for you. What do you need to teach? What do you need to inspire your leaders with? What science do they need to follow? And because this is science-driven. This isn't just, I thought this up. Wouldn't it feel nice if we did this? This isn't wishful thinking. So interestingly, these fit in these three categories. So they all point towards valuing. Personality science is valuing people in the past. Emotional science is valuing people in the present. Value science is valuing people in the future. So we take this sort of temporal dimensions and we put them together. When people feel that you're valuing them, their personality, their story from their past, they feel valued and known. When you feel like you're engaging with them in the present emotionally, they feel like you're present and you're containing them. You're empathizing with them. And when you paint a picture for the future that's hopeful, like we could value each other, we could go into eternity with this because we're valuing, I'll follow you there, I'll go there. So let's look at these individually. Personality science, what is that? This is what's so incredible when you study this. The DNA of personality has been discovered, and it was discovered decades ago. But we don't know what it is. It's the biggest and most neglected scientific discovery that I know of. We know what 5 qualities makes up every human being, and they've done so much studies about this that they've done 30 years of research. This is the most widely studied. It's called the law of psychology. Psychologists have no laws because they're all over the place most of the time. This is considered holy grail. Personality, the 5-factor model of personality. And because it works in all ethnicities, all genders, all ages, they studied it all over the world. They've tried to debunk it again and again and again, and they can't. So these are the 5 factors that we need to study that make up. Imagine if your leaders knew exactly what made up a human being and what each one member of their team looked like. I'll point in the wrong direction here. Why is this so important? Because people long to be known and understood. You know, when I was back in that my first job in Greece there, I didn't feel known and understood. Gallup leadership studies point out that if people feel known and understood and are led to their strengths, they're going to be engaged as employees. Okay? People, this is what's incredible, is most of the time this is used, and I think there's a vendor out there that uses this. They do this study to keep people from taking jobs that they would hate because people don't know themselves. We have to do studies as HR people and put them through personality tests to make sure that they don't take a job that they would hate. They don't just show up with themselves and go, I hate that job. People don't know themselves. So you can imagine your leaders don't know themselves, because leaders are what going to shape your culture more than anything else. They have 75% more influence on your culture. Those line leaders, those people that are leading 5 people, they're the core of your culture. And when they don't know themselves, they're not going to know the people they're leading. We'll see why that's so devastating. Most of us, probably even in this room, cannot name the 5 factors of personality, and I'm sure your line leaders don't know them either. And most of your people in your organization don't know them. They don't know themselves. I didn't know it even 5 years ago. When I started studying them, I was like, oh, this is amazing. But it takes a little bit of investment to learn 5 words and what they mean. It's worth taking that cultural dive. Like when I lived in Greece, and that took some time. You have to immerse yourself to learn a language, to learn a culture. So a little bit of language learning to learn 5 words and what they mean, and that will revolutionize your culture. Click. What this does for you, it accepts differences as good because they're fixed. Okay? If I see I have this personality trait and you have the opposite personality trait, we could do great things with that because then we complete it. You know, I'm missing this, you have it. I can't make it up. Nobody has all of the personality traits. You realize this when you study it. There's no super person who has every trait perfectly. No, you get one to an extreme or one in the middle or one less. But we all need each other and we accept differences as good because all of the things are powerful. All the personalities have benefits and we accept each other as good. We can predict perceptions. Imagine if you had a team, and now I have a team, I can say, we're going to launch a new piece of software. And I know these 4 are going to hate it. This person's going to be like, oh, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I love new software. And you'll predict it. You'll be like, okay, this is going to be hard. You're not going to like this. You're going to love this. But calm down enough. You know, wait for these people to follow up on you. You know, because you can predict that because you know their personalities. You can use this with this personality test. It's that good. You could predict their behaviors. Let's see, we've got a new office layout. You get to go in the back in the cubicle all by itself in the back, and you get to stay here in this group table over here. You know, you put a bunch of introverts around the group table and be like, I want the cubicle in the back. You could predict their behaviors and arrange them and give them jobs that will fit with who they are. Your leaders need to be able to do that, okay? So, introverts. I usually do this online, so type me in the chat. So raise your hand if you're an introvert, even though introverts don't like doing that. Sorry, I'm an extrovert. You'll get the next question, too. Do extroverts like I treat you like you're an extrovert? Let's hear from you. Do extroverts treat you introverts like extroverts? Yes, I see you nodding your heads because you don't like to shout out. My wife is an introvert, so after I read up about introverts, I read the book called Quiet, and it's all about introverts, the secret power of introverts. I'm like, every chapter, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to my wife. Because they're powerful people. They're more sensitive. They see more than we do. They experience more life. She's attuned to everybody in this room. She know exactly what you're feeling. And I'm just like, can't see it. I'm just fine. So when we have this category that's been in our culture, extroverts, introverts, everyone's heard about it. But yet, so many of our leaders don't even know how to do this right. So that's a simple example. Click, click, click. There we go. So when you do this personality science right, you're going to create value. People feel valued. Okay, this points towards value. This is valuing people from their past, creating a culture of value. Let's look at the emotional science. This is a hard one. Okay, Amy Edmondson, a Harvard Business School graduate, she wrote a book called. She wrote a book about this. Okay, it escapes my mind presently. But she was studying emotionally safe teams, and she had an hypothesis about emotionally safe teams. She thought emotionally safe teams are going to have better outcomes than emotionally not safe teams, right? And so she said they're going to have more effective outcomes. They're going to know they're going to be emotionally intelligent. So she found a bunch of emotionally intelligent teams and some that weren't. And she studied them, and she found the exact opposite to be true. And you're like, wait, what? The exact opposite was true according to her initial research. Like, how's that going to be? And she was like, how's that going to be? So all the teams that were emotionally unsafe were reporting great outcomes. They were like almost perfect. And the emotionally safe teams had all these errors. She's like, huh. Fortunately, she went back and had a secret researcher follow them behind. And she found out that the opposite was actually true. The emotionally unsafe teams were fudging the records because it wasn't safe for them to make a mistake. So they had to alter the outcomes. The emotionally safe people were safe enough to say, you know what, that one time I made a mistake. You know what, I think I did 2 errors today. And they could report accurately what was actually going on. Because it was safe enough, their leaders were like, oh, it's okay, we'll fix that. And the outcomes were actually better on the safe teams. So emotional science was critical. But the old behavioralism guys, the old managers, and many of our managers are very afraid of this, so they say, let's follow the advice of hide your emotion. Leave that at home. Leave those emotions at home. Or banish them. That's not for work. Go take care of yourself at home. But you can't, okay? A lot of these, just hide it behind the smile. How's everything going? Good. There's actually differences. There's neurological muscles that when we fake a smile, like look at a 4-year-old when they try to fake a smile for a picture, it's like, oh, it's really bad because they don't know how to fake well yet. Okay? So there's different muscles because your brain uses different muscles to fake. When you are truly happy, different muscles because it's a different nervous system that works upon those muscles. Fascinating. So we can't fake this and you can't banish this because people know what's going on in actuality. So we need to have to do a different technique. Instead of banishing it, let's follow what Steve Hayes has to do. He's the founder of ACT, and they've studied this for over 30 years and used it in the workplace for over 30 years. So instead of banishing it, his idea is to have perspective on emotions, to be mindful on emotions, and to accept them, create space for them, contain them. Not reactive, not pushing it away, saying, shut up, it's to accept them. Freedom to act out of our values. So this is what it looks like. So we can accept our emotions, and then we can pivot towards our values. That's the whole theory of ACT. It's very simple, and they've used it in the workplace for years as an effective way to deal with being present. Helping, if a leader can do this for themselves, they can then give containment to their team, and their team can be safe in reporting something that could potentially be emotional, like, oh, we made an error today. We didn't meet our goal on time. So we get to do a little bit of exercises together with this, okay? So let me just show you this first exercise. It's called the hand exercise. Steve Hayes points this out and so on one hand, emotions are made out of 2 things, thoughts and bodily sensations. So your boss sends you an email, says, come to my office. And that's how you read it. Come to my office. So immediately your body goes, bad news. And then your thoughts are like, he's going to crush me. It's going to be wrong. I know I did that one thing a little bit late. And then you're thinking, so what do you have? What emotion do you have? You have fear. And fear, those 2 hands come together to make fear. And it comes right up in your face. And you're getting reactive. You say, I'm going to blame it on the vendor. I'm going to blame it on my boss. He never gives me enough time. I'm going to blame it on my coworker. And then what if you could just take perspective? See, right here, you can't see. But what if you could suddenly see and take perspective? And you go, whoa, my body got really amped up when I got that email from him. He said, come to my office. Give myself a little bit of grace. Calm down a little bit. Those thoughts, they're out of control. Maybe it's nothing. And maybe if it is something, I'll go in with my values and just say, I'll do my best. I'll work harder. I'll keep going in the right direction. And you go into the office and you find out, oh, here's some free tickets to the baseball game. I don't have, and you're like, But you gave yourself perspective on the emotion rather than freaking out and reacting to it. So we're gonna do some brain exercises. So here's the first one for 30 seconds. I'll give you 15 seconds. See if you can control your thoughts to see how much in control of your thoughts you are. For 15 seconds, you're not supposed to think of anything. No thinking for 15 seconds. See if you can just turn it off. Ready? Go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Don't think. 8, 9, 10, 12. Don't think of anything. 15. So when you have any super gurus here didn't think of anything for 15 seconds? You couldn't even turn off your brain for 15 seconds?
It was hard not to hear your counting.
Oh, you see? There's always something. Okay? We can't just go, phew. We don't have that kind of control. Our brains are always pushing something up into our thought process. Okay? Just even if I were to tell you, don't think of anything, but only think of white polar bears, and suddenly that's all you could think of. So we don't have control of our thoughts. There's something subcortical that are pushing thoughts most of the time into our brain. Ever think about like when you're driving along, my cell phone, where did that come from? You weren't thinking, let me take an inventory. You just remembered your cell phone. Okay, now I want you to stand up. We're going to do a physical exercise, and you need to experience this. If you've got a little bit balance problems, you might not want to do this one. Okay, I want you to stand on one foot. And if you're really tricky, you can go up on your toes. And what do you notice? I see some people wiggling. Okay, what did you notice? Did you have to think about like your balancing going on there? Did you go like, okay, send blood down there, calf muscle, little toe, come on little toe, big toe, lean to the side. You did no thinking. Your body was doing that for you. In fact, you have nerves down here that are reacting before you can even think. Like your knee nerves are reacting to this to straighten you out. Your vestibular system internally in your brain, all these subcortical systems, you're not thinking about a thing. You don't go like, oh, I'm going to balance. The only thing you thought of was to go up on one foot, and then your body took over. Okay, you could sit down, because that's the same thing that happens with your emotional system. When you get that email, you don't go, gee, I think I'll tell my body to freak out. It just does. It goes, ah! In fact, it takes 2 nanoseconds for your body to freak out, because that's what it's designed to do. It's like, bear! Oh! It's just supposed to react, and so it does. It's doing its thing. Our prefrontal cortex gets to go, oh, look, our body's going crazy. It's a little bit slower. It's going crazy down there. That's all we get to do. We get to observe it and be mindful of it. Okay? So those are the 2 things. Is be mindful of your thoughts. You're not in complete control of them. Because your first thought is like, oh my gosh, my boss is going to kill me. It's just a crazy thought. Okay? It could be. And then your body freaks out and it's like, my body's being crazy. You know? And when you just accept your body, it's like, it's okay, body, it's okay, thoughts. We're going to be okay. We're in this together. Your prefrontal cortex can be mindful and go, oof, let's just have perspective here, and we'll act out of our values. Okay? That, you know, if I try to control it, it causes rumination and makes me reactive. If I accept it, it causes freedom. Okay? So you could see if I, as a leader, am always being reactive, like, it's going to be the end of the world, no! And you come to me with news, and I go, whoa! And I can't contain your emotions. If I can go, it's going to be okay. We're both feeling stressed. We're both disappointed that we didn't make the goal. We're both freaked out that the vendor screwed up the order. Our client is going to be upset. Imagine, you know, that's the number one thing. If you could do this with your clients, the client calls and they're upset. Oh my gosh, you're really upset. That must feel horrible. I feel horrible too. Then the client goes, yeah. Instead of like making excuses and being reactive. Okay, so if you have this kind of emotional thing, you can accept others and value them. People feel accepted and can connect. Emotional science is being present with others. If my leader back in Greece could just be accepting of me and emotionally present, we couldn't resolve a single conflict. He was a 50-year-old. You couldn't have a conversation with a 20-year-old that had an emotionally charged anything in it. You just had to shut it down with power. Imagine if he could have gone, it'll be okay. I see you're upset. It's going to be all right. We can work this out. We can be creative. We can use our higher brains because we're going to lift from the crisis into that higher place. We would feel valued. I would feel valued. I'd be saying, that boss changed my life instead of that boss ruined my dream. So that leads us to the third science, value science. How do we create value in the future for people? So we got the past, the present, and the future. Value science is, again, based on these 2 scientific theories. It's the future of valuing people. Now, here's the key. We heard about goals in business. And we hear a little bit about values too, but we don't know the relationship between the 2. Goals lead to stuff and outcomes, and then they end. There's never a goal that leads on forever in life. We always get to the goal, and then it stops. We get the little, yay, dopamine, and then dopamine goes away. It was just like Audrey Agassi. He won the U.S. Open, all the Opens. He went, yay, and then it was like, now what? There's no more goals that were driving him. It leads to stuff, not to people. Values lead to people forever. Okay? So you set a course of value. You say, I'm going to create harmony in people's lives. I'm going to create wisdom in people's lives. I'm going to create joy and happiness in people's lives. And I'm going to do that forever. I never get to the end of creating joy. I just keep going. It's an endless direction. That's why values like this are part of that forever thing that creates value for people. When valuing people becomes your vision, you will thrive. Because you will continue on a pathway that no one can take from you. No one can upset this. Okay, from valuing people to financial, you think about, well, how do we make money doing this? And Southwest Airlines tried to do this. They said, or United saw Southwest, thriving, and they go, oh, they're thriving. Let's copy all their goals. So United make a separate little sub-airlines and try to copy all their goals. But they didn't copy their values. So they didn't succeed because it's the values. Southwest has great business processes, but it's the values that drove them. It's the future driving that Southwest had. So here's something that Viktor Frankl, who wrote The Man's Search for Meaning, came up about values. He said there's 3 levels of values, creational values. And this is where most organizations are, okay? They say, we create widget X with quality and integrity. How many have heard mission statements like that? Yes, we create this widget with quality and value and integrity. That's great. But why? We want to create experiential values. We ask the question, why do we create that? So that people can, why do we do work at Pumps R Us and pump water? So that people can go home to their children and have fresh water to drink and they experience health and life. That's much better than we pump water, pump faster, because we make money pumping water. We're creating experience for human beings. Starbucks creates a great cup of coffee. Why? Because they want to create a home away from home experience. Not just a great cup of coffee, but that's part of it. It's not just we create a great cup of coffee so we make bank. That's not their mission statement. They want to create an experience for people. But most organizations stop there because they can't rise to the next level, which is ultimate values, which is one more why. Why do we create this? And this is where Viktor Frankl's big insight came, because people are intrinsically valuable. Why do we do all the organizations? Why are we here right now? Because you value people. You're doing something for people. What do your organizations do that they represent? They make things for people. They do services for people. It's for people. And if you show up at work and think you're a commodity, they're just taking my time so that I can give it to those people. Instead of saying, I show up at Walmart to greet them because I value each individual that comes through that door. I wipe down the cart and I give it to them with a smile because I get to value each person that comes through that door. That's what ultimate values do. And when you see somebody who's alive with ultimate values, they thrive. Viktor Frankl, the guy who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, found this out in a concentration camp. And you think, how did he learn this there? Well, they took away everything. He showed up at the camp with his life's work, his manuscript, his life's work. They took it and burned it. You know, this is back in the day where there's no files. That was it. Gone. It took away his dignity. We were walking in barefoot down the pathway to dig a ditch that nobody cared about. His work didn't have experiential values. It was miserable. It was excruciating. What did he learn? He learned that no one could take away his ultimate values. All the other values were taken away, but he was left with this. He said this, for the first time in my life I saw that truth, as it is set in song by so many poets and proclaimed as the final wisdom, by so many thinkers, that truth, that love is the ultimate and highest value to which man can aspire. And then I grasped the meaning of the greatest secret of human poetry and human thought, and belief have to impart that the salvation of man is through love and in love. The highest value is valuing human beings. He saw that when everything else was taken away, having the highest value could propel him even through the darkest of times. And we live in difficult times, but not that dark. We want to inspire your employees, your culture with these kind of values. The highest values, that we're doing this because we're all worth it. Dare I say, we as human beings are sacred. And we serve each other in a sacred trust. And no matter what level you're doing it, it's sacred. And people feel valued when they're a part of that kind of integrity, that kind of valuing of other people. Their future is inspired. And they will follow leaders who inspire people because they want to go this way. Everyone wants to go this way. So this is where we move from science to art. Okay? I've just talked about it as terms of 3 science because I wanted to give you guys background so that when you sit at that table of leaders, you can say, this is the reason why these things are so important. It's not just woo-woo. It actually works. There's actually mental things that happen to people when we shape them like this. But we don't want to leave it just in this like technical thing. I want you to create teams of people that inspire with the art of culture, that they become players of this, that when they see your leaders like that guy, he knew how to value people. He was an artist of it. That coach at that school, he had all the kids following him because he inspired value in every single one. That leader Everyone who went through his department came out going, I wish I could go back. I want to be like them. I want to be like her. That's what we want. We want to bring you to this art. And Andre Agassi actually found this later in his life. He said, I'm not playing for myself, I'm playing for others. I'm playing for the joy of my fans. And he says his knees were shot and his elbows were shot and he was in pain. He went back to be number one. He fought on and he used his money to set up charter schools. And he wrote a letter to his son. He said, Jaden, never forget that life is about valuing people. So his life ended up valuing people and he found his rhythm again in life. My daughter Ashley, I didn't tell her just like, buck up, life is about working, making money. She did stop being an art major. She still paints because she loves it, but she joined the Army National Guard because she wants to serve veterans. And I was able to tell her, valuing people, when valuing people comes to your vision, you live victorious. Nobody can take that away. So fear not. Even if the job is not enjoyable, you're valuing people. And so through difficulties, she's like, yeah, I can do that, Dad. I can value people for the rest of my life, no matter what I'm doing. So I can inspire something like that too. So I want to leave you with a story from Southwest Airlines that kind of epitomizes this. This is a letter to Southwest Airlines. The letter writer says, Dear Southwest Airlines, I'm writing to comment and gratefully acknowledge the fine service my husband and I recently served on one of your planes. My husband returned to Norfolk, Virginia after a year of serving in Iraq. Our flight home from Baltimore to Long Island was the last leg of a long journey for him. The flight became an unforgettable memory for us both. Your employee, flight attendant Sandra, took the time and the effort not only to thank my husband personally for his service, but asked everyone else on the plane to do the same before exiting by allowing us to get off the plane first. As we began to exit, the passengers clapped, thanked, congratulated us. Both of us began crying during Sandra's detailed announcement about my husband's service and our life together, and we continued crying as we made our way up the aisle of the plane. People were patting us on the back and congratulating us. It was a relief to finally feel appreciated that our sacrifices that we made as a family and our children had made as a family meant something. And as touched as we were at what went on inside the plane, we were floored to find that your employees on the ground were waiting outside to present my husband with a bottle of champagne as well as their thanks. I was extremely touched when one of your employees came to me and said, and let me also thank you for what must have been a difficult time this past year. As we entered the gate, everyone stood and applauded a man they never knew. All because of the valuing actions of one of your employees named Sandra. She created a lasting, treasured memory that will last a lifetime. And that's what brings us back to this table. I hope now that you are full of scientific ideas, techniques, a target culture, but most importantly, that you understand the art of inspiring people towards valuing and creating a culture, a VP culture, wherever you go for the rest of your life, and with the organizations that you lead, that you could be that inspirational light that will change lives like Sandra did, that they will have lasting memories forever that will change their lives. Thank you very much.